Hi, we are in the principal's office with the principal of the West Somerville School, Kathleen Seward. Hello, Kathleen.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for joining us. Of course, you know that this year has been a lot different from every other school year that we've had before, to say the least. Before it started remotely, what actions have been put in place to ensure that every West Somerville student is ready technologically and mentally?
Yeah, so I think to get ready for this school year, we had the opportunity to reflect on what worked in the spring when we had the emergency shutdown and had to scramble to kind of get things in place. So we were able to look at what worked and what didn't, and then kind of plan backwards from there of what we needed to have in place ahead of time, what technology students needed, what materials they needed to make sure that they were able to access. And one of the things that we learned is that we needed to have, just like we would in in-person school, a master coordinated building schedule so that students wouldn't have a conflict between attending their homeroom class and their music class. So a lot of the systems and structures that we would have in a typical in-person school year were just used and transitioned over to the remote. Thinking about how to support students, because a lot of times in school, we'll notice that a student maybe seems a little sad, a little withdrawn, and then we can very quickly let a counselor know, have someone check in with the student. It's a little bit trickier to do that remote because no one's going to walk by a classroom and just be able to check in. So we had to put some systems in place for communicating remotely when those things happen to make sure we're able to follow up with kids and support them as needed. And the other thing that we thought a lot about at West Somerville was, what are some of the traditions, kind of the intangible things that are part of our school that maybe we didn't think were that big of a deal when we were together in person because we just did them all the time, but that we were not able to do last spring? And how could we bring those things back so we did have a sense of community, even though we're all in separate Zoom rooms? And that's kind of what school is.
How is it working out thus far, the remote learning?
It's going a lot better than expected. I think that because we had the difficult situation in the spring of the unexpected shutdown that we were really unprepared for, we were able to figure things out. And so this year we could plan for what we knew had to be in place. So, starting with the basics of making sure everyone had internet access, everyone had a device that was working that they knew how to use, making sure kids had tech skills, because teaching tech skills has always been a part of our curriculum, but it doesn't usually start till about third grade. But obviously this year, everyone needs to learn tech skills in order to even access their learning.
Right. Now, eventually you'll be returning in some form. What kind of safety protocols have been put in place upon the return?
Yeah, so first of all, when we return, it will be in a hybrid. So we will have about half as many students in the building at a time as we normally would. So that de-densification is one of the things that enables us to keep kids and staff 6 feet apart, which is one of the recommendations from the CDC. So that will be, one thing. We'll also be doing a testing program for staff and students, where staff will get tested 2 times a week, COVID tested, and students will get tested once a week. The idea being to catch any COVID before it even comes into the school, so we can keep schools open once we open them. And actually, a lot of us who work from the buildings have started, I'm not in the building today, I'm at home, but I do work in the building a couple days a week. And we started getting tested in December once a week. And the results turn around usually in less than 24 hours.
Yeah, I know I went into West Somerville in December to record a little bit of how you are getting ready for the hybrid return, the in-person return. And you guys are really on top of it. I saw the classrooms were, like you said, the desks were 6 feet apart, and I was speaking to the nurse. So you are definitely on your way. You're definitely ready.
Yeah, definitely ready. Lots more hand hygiene stations all over the school, so that kids can sanitize or wash quickly. Signage that shows you which way to walk and how to stay separate if you're waiting for the bathroom. So those things are all in place.
In terms of the curriculum, have there been any changes now or even throughout the year since September?
So I think I mentioned a little bit before, one of the things that was a big change is the front loading of teaching technology that wouldn't typically have happened in kindergarten and pre-K, but that was a necessity this year so that students could get into their Zoom meetings, they could know how to operate the features in Zoom. The younger students at West use a platform called Class Dojo, where the teacher assigns work to them and they can submit through that platform. So teaching kids the mechanics of using that. There was a lot of front loading of that.
By age and grade level, have you seen any differences in students adapting to the remote learning? Because I'm sure there are definitely differences between a second grader learning remotely as opposed to a seventh or eighth grader learning remotely.
Yeah, I mean, I think for older students who are used to using technology, both in school and in their outside lives, the ability to access came a lot more quickly. There wasn't as much of a need to teach them how to use Zoom and platforms like Google Classroom. There's still some teaching needed, but it was a little more intuitive for them because they had some practice and skills prior. We were all pretty nervous about the younger kids and how to really make that happen. Because like I said before, it's not typically a part of pre-K and kindergarten. And I think one of the things that we learned is that by really thinking clearly, what are the skills kids need and how are we going to break it down and teach it, just like we would teach the in-school skills. It's amazing how quickly kids can adapt and learn things. Because for kids in kindergarten, although this kindergarten is completely different than any kindergarten, and of course, a lot is missed out on not being face-to-face, but our kindergartners have never done kindergarten before. So they learn to do kindergarten this way. So in some ways, it's harder for the adults to get used to new systems than it is for kids, because they would be learning how to do kindergarten, whether it was remote or in person. So, they've picked up on things quickly.
That leads me to my next question, or kind of answers my next question. The schedule that's been put in place, the kids have adapted pretty quickly, even the younger ones.
Definitely. Actually, we just did a student survey, and one of the questions was, what is something that was really hard for you in the beginning of the year that's no longer difficult? And the options were like, using my device, getting to my meetings on time, completing my work, handing my work in. And a lot of students were able to identify that things like that were very difficult in September, and now they're not.
Right. In terms of coming back in person, what are you looking forward to the most once the students are back in some capacity, whether it's hybrid or full time?
First of all, I would just say seeing kids all the time throughout the day. One of the things in remote world is that if you're not in a class, you're not seeing kids. In my normal life as a principal, I'm not in classes all the time. I'm in classes a good bit, but I'm also in the caf. I'm at recess. I'm walking through the halls. I'm in the office when someone comes in late. So all of those interactions that I get to have with kids and opportunities to support them and connect them that don't happen now, because now everything has to be planned. You have to, plan to call someone, plan a Zoom meeting. So I just miss those interactions that happen as a matter of course when we're together.
Have you had any after school programs virtually?
So the after school program at our school has done some in-person outside programming. And then when the weather has been either rainy or very cold like it was the past week, they've moved it to virtual. So that's one thing sponsored by the schools. Right. There are also some other programs in the community that kids have done.
I know when I was there in December, they were giving out lunches, which is a great opportunity for people to get food if they can't, during this pandemic.
Yeah, food service has done a great job right from the beginning. I think it was within 2 days of us closing in the spring, they had a system in place to hand out meals and to get meals to people, which has been great.
Now, hopefully we can learn from this pandemic, what's been going on for the past almost a year. What's the biggest lesson that has come out of the unexpected shift to the remote learning for you personally?
I guess for me personally, a couple of things. One is an affirmation of something that I already believed, but the idea that when a team of people can work well together, they can accomplish a lot, even under really difficult and unprecedented circumstances. I'm really proud of what my teachers and my staff has been able to put together for remote school. Again, it's not the same as being together, but it's pretty impressive how we've been able to keep kids connected to the school and to each other. I think I learned that I'm a lot more flexible and adaptable than I would have thought.
We all have.
Yeah, I think that's a huge learning for all of us. And, it's good to remember and carry forward. And I think on a more practical level, there's some tools that we've started using because of the necessity in remote that actually could be beneficial to continue to use when we are back together. So just thinking about what are those things that we've been forced to learn to do and learn to use that might really augment our work when we're back to normal.
Right. Do you think we'll ever have a normal, as you say? Again, will it take another year? Will it take a few years in terms of it being exactly the way it was pre-pandemic?
So I don't think it will be exactly the way it was pre-pandemic, because I think we've all learned a lot and we've moved forward as an educational system and a school. As far as like having kids in the building 5 days a week and having the full school in there, I'm really hopeful that with what we're seeing with the numbers and the vaccine, that will be able to happen next year.
Right.
But again, I often think like I'm done with COVID, but COVID is not done with me. So
Right.
We have to just wait and see.
I think we've all learned that. One last question. What message would you like to share with the West Somerville neighborhood school community in this weird, unusual school year?
I would just say thanks for your flexibility and patience. Hang in there. Keep the feedback and questions coming. That helps us make sure that we're doing our best to serve people. And we can't wait to be safely back in the building with your kids.
Great. Well, this has been Steve DiCarlo for City TV. I've been speaking with Principal Kathleen Seward of the West Somerville Neighborhood School. Thanks so much, Kathleen. We'll see you next time. Good luck. Be safe.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye.